Hello, I'm Sharon Albert, Director of the Mission Trails Regional Occupational Program. The program you're about to see is a production of the Mission Trails Digital Media Network. This production features local students engaged in the California State Career Technical Education Pathway, Arts, Media, and Entertainment. A special thanks to the Media Center for Art, Education, and Technology, a department of the Monterey County Office of Education, for making this broadcast possible. Thank you for watching. Now let's enjoy the show.
Howdy cowboy and cowboy fans. I'm Brianna Eckhouse.
I'm Emma Garcia.
And we're back with another episode. We have two exciting interviews with Dr. Casey Lucius and Mr. Jimmy Panetta. Emma, you sure have the political bug, don't you?
I sure do, Brianna. I loved interviewing our congressional candidates, Dr. Casey Lucius and Mr. Jimmy Panetta, giving our viewers the raw and honest views on where they stand politically. So check it out for yourself. Howdy Cowboys, my name's Emma Garcia here today doing an exclusive interview with Dr. Casey Lucius, who's running for Congress in the 20th District. Hi Dr. Casey Lucius.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks
so
for having me.
I'm so glad you were able to come out today and
Of course.
interview for CowboyTV.
Yeah, this is great, thank you.
So let's start our interview. So what are your thoughts about the homeless issues as a nation and also locally? And if you are elected, what would you do to help with some of these issues?
Yeah, it's actually a really big problem, especially here in Monterey County. In fact, the USDA actually declared part of Monterey County and even part of Salinas as a food desert, which means that it's a low income area and low access to fresh fruits and vegetables, which is ironic since we have so much produce here. But it basically just reinforces that we have a lot of people here living in poverty, and as you suggest, we have a lot of homeless. And I think we can do a couple of things. One is, I'm a veteran, and I want to make sure that we don't have our veterans living on the street. And we do have facilities and services for our veterans through the Veterans Transition Center and many veterans organizations here in Monterey County. The other thing is we have some elderly and also some students who are homeless right now in Monterey County. And what I would like to see is, I serve on the board at the former Fort Ord, and I would love to see that land developed for affordable housing, and especially like apartments, dormitory style housing, single family homes, but allow different phases and different levels and different categories of housing depending on who the need is for. And we could get federal funding. What I would like to advocate for is federal funding to initiate a project like that.
Well, that's really great to hear. So have you ever thought of bringing back mental health hospitals also?
Yes, we absolutely need those. In fact, we have seen there was a proposition on the ballot here in California 2 years ago, and it related to mental health and also to substance abuse, with the suggestion that instead of arresting people and putting them in county jail or in state prison, let's make sure that they get rehabilitation and therapy and get the services that they need. That was passed by the citizens of California, but unfortunately it wasn't funded by the state government. And so we really do need funding for mental health services. And we also need to make sure that funding for mental health is included in the Affordable Care Act and included in VA services for veterans. Because right now, sometimes we just clump healthcare all together, and mental health services are really unique. They need to be properly diagnosed and properly treated, and it requires a different specialty, and it may also require different insurance. But I think we have to separate physical health and mental health and really have legislation and funding for our mental health efforts.
Wow, because here in Salinas, they can take the homeless that are mentally ill, but they only stay into the hospital for about 72 hours.
That's right.
Just to get them kind of sobered back up.
Right,
so,
and then they end up back on the streets.
Yeah, doing the same
right.
thing.
So it's not really a service to our homeless, and it's not really a service to our community either, because ultimately we want those individuals to get the help they need and be able to come back and make contributions in our community and get jobs and and really be productive members of society. And right now, with the kind of the in and out system that we have, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And then, as we all know, school systems are always in room for improvement. So, if elected, what would you enact to better our education system?
Yes. So there was a bill that was passed in Congress last year. It's called the Every Student Needs Act. And it does offer federal funding for school districts, especially low-income school districts. So again, that's really helpful here in Monterey County, especially in South Monterey County. We do have several low-income school districts. It includes recruitment for more teachers. It also includes nutrition programs. I think that's particularly important because if we want our students to succeed, we don't want them going to school hungry and being hungry all day. And we shouldn't live in a society like that, I believe. Yeah. But I also think we need to invest in vocational training, especially in high schools. I mean, I'm so glad that you're having this experience because this is like job training for you guys, and this is really important. But we want to make sure that there's different vocational training and different job skills being taught in high school. So ultimately, I think we want every student to have the option to go to college. But if a student can't go to college, either because they can't go because of academics or they can't go financially, then I think we want to make sure that when they graduate, they can get a job and that they have proper training and proper job skills. And when I was in high school, we used to have a lot of job training and vocational training in school, and unfortunately a lot of those programs have been cut because of federal funding cuts. So I would certainly want to make the investment through the Department of Education to reinvest in vocational training.
Nice. And then also, how do you feel about free college tuition for the first 4 years?
Yes. So I'm actually not a fan of free college tuition, and I'll tell you a quick story. So I actually grew up living in low-income housing, and my family, my mom worked 2 jobs, my dad worked in a steel factory, and we didn't have any money for me to go to college. And so I actually thought I wasn't going to be able to go to college. But my stepdad and my mom cashed in their retirement to help me pay for college. And I'm so grateful that they did that and that they made that investment in me. I mean, I still had to waitress at night. Yeah. I still took out a student loan, and I still was a resident assistant in the dorms. But we pieced it together and we made it work. But because of all of those things that had to happen, I mean, I really valued my education, and I think it's important that we want students to have a stake in their education. And there is something about when you have to pay for something, you appreciate it more. I think we need to figure out how to lower the cost of higher education because it is so unaffordable. And we also have to make sure that students can refinance their loans so that they're not going into debt, $50,000, $100,000 in debt and not able to pay it off. There's definitely room for improvement when it comes to affordability and loans. But I'm not somebody who thinks everyone should just go to school for free. I think we do want people to make that sacrifice and be stakeholders. And then, like I said, we want people to have alternative paths. So if they can't go to college, then at least they have those alternative vocational training options, or community college. In California, community college is very affordable, thank goodness. And we want people to have that alternative route so that they can still graduate and be successful.
Well, that really makes sense though, because like you said, if you have to pay for something, that's like if your parents are like, well, you have to go buy your own clothes. Yeah. You're like, I should really take care of these clothes because I have to buy
Exactly,
it.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. And then my next question is, so what are your thoughts about dealing with gang violence, police brutality, and also school terrorism?
Yes, so this is really, I think, a really scary topic. I mean, I have a son who's in public school, and I worry about terrorist incidents or criminal incidents at schools. And of course, gang violence continues to be a problem here in Salinas. I think they're kind of 2 separate problems in many ways. I mean, on the one hand, dealing with gangs, I think we want to invest in education and in vocational training so that those young people feel like they have an alternative. Yeah. They have an alternative to make money, they have an alternative to be productive. But that kind of education has to start young. There's a statistic from our Monterey County Sheriff's Department and from our local police departments that say you really have to be able to influence kids before they enter 3rd grade. Wow. Because they'll start making decisions about whether to engage in conflict or violent activity or engage in a gang, they'll start making those decisions as early as 3rd and 4th grade.
Wow.
So that means we have to really, I think, start socializing them at kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and teaching them skills so that they don't they don't choose that path, and that they recognize that there are better paths through education and through having a good job, that they can have a better life for themselves and for their families. And then when it comes to gun violence and threats that many schools around the country are facing, I think that comes back to how we treat mental illness. And we talked a little bit about that earlier, but really I think making sure that we separate mental illness from physical illness, and that we really treat it as a specialty area, making sure that we invest in doctors and insurance companies so that we can get people the proper diagnosis and the proper treatment. And in many ways, I think that will help us deal with some of the violent incidents that we're seeing around the country. And then again, in my mind, because I did have the opportunity to go to college, and that really changed my life, I know firsthand that education can change lives, and I know that it can pull people out of their struggle. It can pull people out of a bad situation.
And so, Dr. Casey, before we end here, is there anything you would like to add or say?
Sure. Well, I'll just, for all the students who are watching, I just want to remind them how important it is to vote this year, especially in this election. This seat has not been an open seat for 23 years.
Wow.
So we haven't really had a choice or a competitive race for 23 years. We've never had a woman represent this district. And I always tell people, if you're on the fence about who to vote for a woman. And the reason I say that is because women are actually more productive in office than men. So sorry for any of the men who are watching, but there's actually data on this. And in the House of Representatives, women make up 19% of the members, but they pass almost 60% of the legislation. Oh, wow. And they do it with bipartisan support. So I always tell people, definitely get out there and vote. Be an informed voter, and if you don't know what to do, then vote for the woman, because women are getting things done. And then I would also just tell anybody who's watching and listening to check out my Facebook page.
So, well, we would like to thank you, Ms. Dr. Casey.
Thank you.
But that's all the time we have today, so it's been an honor to have you here on Cowboy TV.
Thank you.
See you guys later, Cowboys.
Thank you.
Howdy, Cowboys. My name is Emma Garcia here today, doing an exclusive interview with Mr. Jimmy Panetta here, running for Congress in the 20th District. So, hi, Mr. Jimmy Panetta. We're so glad to have you here today. So how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Emma, and thanks to all the Cowboys out there for having me on the Cowboy TV. I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate speaking to the population of Salinas High and then some. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's good.
So to start off our interview,
Sure.
What are your thoughts about the homeless issue as a nation and locally? And if you are elected, what would you do to help with some of these homeless issues?
Yeah, no, it's, last December, I went and handed out blankets at Chinatown. And let me tell you, before that, I had been in Chinatown probably about 2 years ago. And we drove through it, and as you know, up there on Soledad Street, I think it is, back at that time, there were a few tarps, a few tents, things of that nature, a few shopping carts as we've seen there. But then when I went in December, I couldn't believe the amount of tarps that literally line that street from the end of the block, one side of the block to the other. I was dumbfounded. Yeah. And the blankets that we were handing out went like that, obviously. Yeah. So clearly there's an issue. I think right now there's about, I think it's the census that they did, said there was about 2,300 homeless in Monterey County. They did one up in Santa Cruz County. It's about 2,500 according to the census, although if you talk to people who work with the homeless, they'll tell you it's a lot more than that, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 people. And I think, you have the number that I last saw about California homelessness, 115,000.
Wow.
115,000.
That's a lot.
1 in 4 has mental health issues.
Wow.
And I think right there is the big issue. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet with a few mental health experts up in Santa Cruz 2 weeks ago, mental health experts and mental health patients. And what was interesting to hear is that these were people who had a loved one who had a mental health illness. And it was a mother, it was a father, it was a brother, sister, grandmother, grandfather who were there who talked about helping their loved one.
Huh.
The problem is that there are people out there with mental health illnesses that don't have those loved ones around them to help them out. And so what happens? That means it falls on our community to step up and to provide that, that guidance, that counseling, that treatment that's necessary.
Yeah.
As a prosecutor here in Salinas, I dealt with mental health issues in the courts.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that's not where it should be dealt with. One, because we don't have the penalties anymore to keep people with mental health illnesses in custody.
Yeah.
So we cannot rely on the criminal justice system to take care of these mental health illnesses.
Yeah.
And it's going to fall on the county, like I said, our community and our county. Now, big counties have resources to deal with these types of issues, for the most part. And you hear what's going on in New York City, where Mayor de Blasio has implemented this Thrive New York City, injected hundreds of mental health experts into the community, into the police department, out onto the streets, helping them deal with people who have mental health illness. Los Angeles County, they created a inmate facility. They allocated enough money to create an inmate facility just for the people with mental health issues, which is interesting. So they're basically separating them from the other inmate population, which is great. Then they also had enough money to do a study as to why there has been an uptick in inmates with mental health issues. From last year, it went from 900 to 3,500.
Wow.
And so they wanted to do a study about that. I have not heard the results, but they had the funding to do a study.
Wow.
Now, we're in a small county.
Yeah.
Monterey County to the north of us, Santa Cruz County, another small county, San Benito County. Three of the 4 districts here, 3 of the 4 counties in this congressional district. The resources aren't there. And so I do think it's incumbent upon county, state, and federal to step up and provide the resources, not only for homelessness, but for mental health issues. Now, if you look, locally we do have grants that have come in and have helped. And let me talk to you about some of these grants. You know, federally, I was a board member on the Veterans Transition Center there on the former Fort Ord that actually deals with homeless veterans. And some of the grants we received, I mean, let me tell you the number, $500,000 to Housing Resource Center of Monterey County, VTC, the Veterans Transition Center was a sub-grantee. $470,000 for Homeless Services Center for vets in Santa Cruz. $425,000 for the Goodwill San Benito County will receive part of it, and $4 million to the Vietnam Vets Incorporated for Central Coast Vets. So we're getting grants, but it just tells you, even with that amount of grants, there's still a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's time for the state and federal government to step up. The state, we have the Mental Health Services Act, Prop 63, which took 1% of the top 1% and put it towards mental health services. Now, with the No Place Like Home Act that Kevin De Leon, the Speaker of the Senate, put forward, a percentage of that is going to go to housing people with mental health issues. So they kind of split it up, which is good. But now it's time for our federal government to step up. Continue providing the grants I spoke of so that local services can get the funding necessary to get out there and contact the people with mental health issues, the homeless with mental health issues, take them in, give them counseling, hopefully give them a shelter.
Yeah.
But I think it's time for the federal government to step up. I do know that one of the presidential nominees has actually talked about what she is going to do when it comes to mental health issues. There was a bill that was recently passed in the House about mental health and providing money for local resources for mental health. This Democratic nominee, has actually said that she's going to call a conference within the first year about mental health issues. She's going to put towards $5 billion towards making sure the resources go to local communities to do that. And she's also going to create an assistant secretary for mental health issues, which I think is well needed. So clearly, I guess my point is, when it comes to homelessness, you have to tie in mental health services. And in order to get those services, you need funding. In order to get that funding, it's got to come from the state and the federal government. If I'm elected to Congress next week, and when I get sworn in, if I get sworn in on January 3rd, that will be a priority for me. It's always been a priority for me ever since we announced. That's one of my top 3 issues: comprehensive immigration reform, mental health reform, comprehensive immigration reform, mental health reform, and college affordability. Top 3 issues that I've had ever since we announced. We haven't had to change. Those have been our issues, and if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'll work on those issues, including mental health and homelessness.
Nice. Yeah. And then for my next question is, I mean, as we all know, schools can always use improvement. There's always room for improvement. So, if elected, what changes would you do? What changes would you enact to better our education system nationwide?
Education, so we're moving on to education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, look, I think I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
One's in 5th grade, one's in 6th grade. They're 20 months apart. They're very close in a lot of ways. And let me tell you, they look alike. They play the same sports. They study the same way. They play the same musical instruments. For a lot of people, it's hard to tell them apart.
Yeah.
Now, as their parent, I can tell them apart. But you know who else can tell them apart? Their teachers.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for me, when it comes to our education system, the focus needs to be on our teachers. Now, unfortunately, in this nation, I feel that we fall behind many other developed countries when it comes to the training, support, and pay for our teachers. As a state, here in California, we would have to hire 60,000 teachers in order to get back to the pre-recession student-teacher ratio levels. Wow. Locally, you know how many vacancies we had in Monterey County last year for teachers? No. 200.
Wow.
200 vacancies. Why? Because as you know as well as I do, this is an expensive area to live.
Yeah.
And teachers don't get paid enough, unfortunately. And so it's hard for them to come here, to teach here, to serve here, to live here. So there needs to be more focus on the teachers. I believe that, yes, we need to up teacher pay. I mean, I read something the other day that talked about there were window washers, there were welders, there were bus drivers, other jobs of that nature that make more than teachers.
Wow.
That line of work, those lines of work make more than our teachers. And that needs to change. The second thing is that we need to make sure that students who go into teaching, who study, getting their teaching credential, and they take out loans to do that, and if they continue to teach, those loans get repaid easily. Yeah. And then you look at, most teachers that I've talked to, they spend well over $1,000 on buying supplies for their classroom.
Yeah. For sure.
You know how much they can get reimbursed in their taxes? Only $250 worth.
Wow.
So that needs to be raised as well. And it's encouraging teachers to come here, to not just work here, but to be a part of this community. I really appreciate this 2+2+2 program that was put forward by the Salinas Valley High Schools, Hartnell, and CSUMB. Within their last 2 years of high school, they're basically getting students focused on teaching. Yeah. Then go to 2 years at Hartnell, focused on teaching. Then you do 2 years, finish out getting your BA, your teaching credential at CSUMB, 2 more years, and then where you go? Right back into the community where you grew up. Yeah. I think that's important. I think it's important to have our teachers, don't get me wrong. I spoke with a bunch of Monterey High School teachers. A lot of them were from Oregon, because that's where they were recruiting. I think we need to look in our own backyard first. Let's make sure that people who study here, who are from here, who have a sense of belonging here, like you have, like I have, give them that opportunity to give back here. And a lot of people want to do that. A lot of people want to teach here. But the problem, they just can't afford doing it. So let's make it affordable for them to do it. I think that's important. So the focus, number one, is on teachers.
Okay. That's kind of really nice to hear, because for me, being a student, obviously, we see our teachers every day sacrificing their lunches, helping that student with that math problem, that essay, that like everything pretty much. So it's kind of nice to hear that they're really trying to take care of our teachers, because like I said, I'd say put more time than they really get paid for. Our next question, how do you feel about free college tuition for the first 4 years of college?
Yeah, look, it sounds great. And I think, you're in a position at your age and your peers where high school education isn't as valued as it used to be, okay? And so we do need to focus on making college more accessible, more affordable. Having free college, of course, that's a great goal to work towards, but it's a difficult goal to work towards, okay? I mean, it's easy to say, it's very tough to do.
Time consuming.
I went to MPC. I went to a community college. I think that's important because for me, it was a time where I could pivot. I played sports in high school, okay? I admit I wasn't, the classroom wasn't my focus. The football field and the wrestling mat, those were my focus. That's where I spent most of my time. But MPC allowed me to pivot. It allowed me to pivot from my athletics to my academics. And so I think community colleges allow people to do it. Therefore, we should make community colleges free. I think that should be the first step because they can provide that educational education to give people the incentive to springboard forward off to a 4-year. But at the same time, you know as well as I do that there are some students that don't want to go to a 4-year. But that's great because the 4 community colleges that we have around here have amazing career technical assistance programs where they can go to community college, go to college, and become an ambulance, EMT person. They have assistants, doctor's assistants, dental assistant programs, computer assistant programs. I mean, a number of programs that they can get that training and then go out into our communities and contribute to our communities. So I believe that we should focus on making community colleges free, accessible, encourage our students at the high school level to go to college, and make it easier for them to attend community college. Important.
And I know we're running out of time, but before you go, I'd have one last question. So what are your thoughts about dealing with the gang violence and police brutality and school terrorism?
Unlike other people, I had the fortunate opportunity to serve on the gang team here in Salinas for 5.5 years. I've been a prosecutor here for 6.5 years. I've actually been up in Oakland for 13 years minus the year I was mobilized and deployed to Afghanistan. I've dealt with violence firsthand. I've seen the effects of violence. And as a gang prosecutor here in Salinas, let me tell you, being from here, and when I was in Oakland, when I got the job down here, I thought being from here and being a prosecutor in Oakland, California, I thought I'd been there and done that. But I get into Oakland, I get put right on the gang team because my experience, let me tell you, my learning curve was very steep. There's not one solution to the gang violence here in Salinas. But from what I've come up with is that we have to realize we cannot arrest our way out of it. But at the same time, our police officers and our police force are integral to the solution. Okay, we need them. Okay, but that's not all we can focus on. We have to focus on what I feel are the families of gang members. Okay, the reason these young men and women join the gang is because of family, because of loyalty, which was much different than why they do it up in Oakland. Down here, not one, I can say this to this day, not one of the cases I prosecuted where the trigger was pulled has anything to do with dope, but everything to do with respect. Why? These families are mothers and fathers who are here, who have come to this country, just like my grandfather did, to give their children and their grandchildren a better life. But they're working very hard, be it in the fields, being at the hotels that are here on the peninsula, they're working very hard. And this young man or woman, and so to me, if someone asks me, there's not one solution, there's not one silver bullet, but we should focus on these families, the mother and father who are still there, who are still present. Get to them, educate them, tell them to continue focusing on their son and daughter, even when they get to an age of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Continued focus on them, continued love, continued loyalty to them, bring them in, keep the gang, the only gang they know is their family. That's how it should be. That's what I've come to learn here as a prosecutor, serving in Salinas.
But that's all the time we have today, but we're so grateful to have you here once again, and so
thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Emma, and thanks to Salinas High and all the Cowboys out there. Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time, Cowboys. Howdy, Cowboys. My name's Emma Garcia.
And I'm Brianna Eckhouse.
And this was your congressional candidate episode with Mr. Jimmy Panetta and Dr. Casey Lucius. We hope you are now more informed about your 2 congressional candidates. So don't forget to go do your civic duty on November 8th. See you next time, Cowboys.